Grey Market always smelled of rain and rusted iron. Beneath the cracked arches of its old fortress, people gathered in a restless half-circle, shouting prices for anything that could be owned. Horses, tools, even people. The chill wind carried the sound of chains clinking like broken bells. Lyra Dane stood barefoot on the wooden platform, a thin grey shift hanging from her shoulders. Her wrists were tied in front of her, though no one really feared she would run. She had nowhere left to go. "Lot 37, the auctioneer cried. His voice rough from years of shouting. Omega female, age 20, sound in body. Wolfless. He paused just long enough for the word to sting. From what was once the Dane family of Hollowmere. A murmur swept the crowd. Everyone knew the Danes had been nobles once, until their youngest daughter had been born without a wolf spirit. To them, Lyra was a shame that could be sold away. The auctioneer grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "We start at 1 copper. The crowd laughed. 1 copper was less than the price of a loaf of bread. Lyra lowered her head. The laughter hurt less when she didn't look at them. She fixed her eyes on the old stone under her feet, pretending it was solid enough to hold her pride. Her heart beat slow and steady. "Breathe. Do not cry." Beside her, another captive whispered, "Don't take it personal. They laugh at everyone." Lyra turned her head slightly. The speaker was a thin boy with eyes too big for his face. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Tam," he said. "I think they'll sell me to the mines." "I hope you find something better," Lyra murmured. He blinked at her. "You hope that? For me?" She nodded once. "Someone should." Before he could answer, the auctioneer slammed his staff against the block. "No takers. Not even for the noble brat without a wolf. Come now, she's got a pretty enough face." The words rolled over her like cold water. Her father had said something similar the night he sent her away. "At least they might find you pretty enough to pity." No one raised a hand. A dog barked somewhere in the crowd. Someone threw a pebble that clattered near her feet. The auctioneer sighed dramatically. "If no one bids, she goes to the tanners. Last call." A tremor ran through her stomach. The tanners' pits were where the unwanted ended, scraping hides until the fumes killed them. Lyra bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. She would not beg. She would not give them that pleasure. The crowd began to drift. The auctioneer was turning away when the sound of hooves echoed through the market. People stepped aside as a dark carriage rolled to a stop, black horses snorting clouds into the cold air. The auctioneer's eyes widened. "Make way! A noble visitor." The carriage door opened. A man stepped out, tall and sharply dressed. His cloak clasped with a silver wolf's head. His hair was the color of frost, though his face looked younger than the hair suggested. Smooth, controlled, handsome in a way that warned of danger. His gaze swept the market once, and every voice fell silent. Lyra had never seen Lord Corwin Vane in person, but she recognized him from the royal seals stamped on every decree. Regent of Eldmere. Uncle to the cursed king. He did not look at the crowd. His eyes found the platform, found her, and for a long moment he simply studied her as though she were a puzzle piece he had been searching for. The auctioneer nearly bowed himself in half. "My Lord Regent. What an honor. May Grey Market serve you well." "We have." Corwin raised a gloved hand. "Spare me your flattery. I require an omega. Come one. The king's healers have failed again." "The curse, my lord?" the auctioneer asked carefully. A faint smile touched Corwin's mouth. "You've heard the whispers. His Majesty grows worse each moon. We must try a gentler remedy." He stepped closer to the platform. Lyra felt the weight of his attention settle on her like frost on bare skin. "This one," he said quietly. The auctioneer blinked. "The wolfless one, my lord. Is well defective. Hardly fit for." Corwin's tone cut through the air. "Precisely why she will do. The king has no need for another frightened creature howling at him. Her emptiness may calm the beast." The crowd murmured again, uneasy. Everyone knew the king's curse. how his wolf spirit had turned into a monster of shadow. No tribute sent to his tower had ever returned. Lyra's throat tightened. Tribute. That meant death. Still, she lifted her head. If this was the end, she would at least meet it standing. The auctioneer cleared his throat. If my lord insists, of course. Her price. Corwin tossed a gold coin onto the block. It rang loudly against the wood, bright and final. That will suffice. The auctioneer scrambled to pick it up. As you wish, my lord. The lot is yours. 2 soldiers in black armor mounted the steps. Lyra flinched as they untied her wrists. Corwin's cold eyes met hers. You may call me Lord Vane. You will speak only when spoken to. Do you understand? Lyra forced her voice to work. Yes, my lord. He studied her another heartbeat, then turned to leave. Bring her to Hollowspire before nightfall. As the guards took her arms, the boy Tam called softly from the edge of the platform. Will you be all right? Lyra managed a small smile. I'll try. It was the only promise she could make. The carriage smelled of leather and rain. Lyra sat on the narrow seat opposite Lord Corwin, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Outside, the grey countryside rolled past, empty fields under a sky the color of ash. No one spoke for a long time. Corwin watched the road through the window, his expression unreadable. When he finally turned to her, his eyes were like cold glass. You don't tremble, he said. Lyra blinked. Should I? Most do when they learn where they're going. I've been afraid for so long, she said quietly. Maybe I ran out of it. That earned a small, humorless laugh. Interesting. He studied her again, as if cataloguing her reactions. Tell me, Lyra Dane, do you know what waits at Hollowspire? I've heard stories, she said. They say the king is cursed. That he turns into a beast. They say many things, Corwin murmured. Some even true. The curse twists his wolf spirit into something monstrous. It devours everyone who draws too near. Yet each month we must send someone to try at least to soothe him. Her fingers tightened in her lap. And none returned. None, he agreed without a trace of regret. But perhaps you'll be different. She looked up. Why me? His smile did not reach his eyes. Because you are empty. No wolf. No fire. Nothing for the curse to feed on. If you survive, the realm gains a miracle. If you die, nothing of value is lost. The calm cruelty of his words hit harder than any insult. Still she kept her gaze steady. You sound certain of the second outcome. Corwin leaned back, amused. Confidence. I like that. It won't save you, but it makes the journey more pleasant. The rest of the ride passed in uneasy silence. Rain began to fall, streaking the windows. Lyra watched the droplets race each other down the glass, imagining for a moment that they were her old life sliding away. When the carriage finally stopped, evening had turned the sky purple. Hollowspire rose ahead, a black fortress perched on a cliff, its towers reaching into the clouds like spears. The air smelled of salt and lightning from the distant sea. Corwin stepped out first. Welcome to your new home, Lady Dane. For however long you managed to keep it. Guards escorted her through gates carved with runes that pulsed faintly as she passed. The courtyard was empty except for a few torches guttering in the wind. The walls seemed to breathe with the sound of distant howls. Inside, the corridors were lined with torn banners bearing the silver wolf of the royal crest. Dust coated everything, and the silence felt heavy enough to break bones. Corwin's boots clicked against the stone as he led the way. You will be taken to the upper tower. The king is kept there. You will speak softly, move slowly, and never touch him unless ordered. Do you understand? Lyra nodded. Yes, my lord. He stopped before a massive iron door bound in silver. Strange marks were etched across its surface, wards against dark magic. 2 guards stood on either side, their faces pale. Corwin turned to her one last time. If by some impossible chance you calm him, you will be rewarded. If not, he shrugged. Pray it is quick. Her mouth was dry. Why do you call it a chance? Don't you believe he can be healed? Belief is for peasants and priests, he said. I deal in results. With that, he gestured to the guards. One unlocked the door. A wave of cold air rolled out, smelling of iron and smoke. Somewhere beyond the darkness, something growled. A low, broken sound that didn't belong to any human throat. Lyra's heart thudded once hard. She forced herself to stand straight. Corwin's expression softened briefly, almost pitying. You may last a night, he said. Perhaps that will be enough. The door opened wider. The guards waited. Lyra stepped forward, one slow breath at a time, until the darkness swallowed her and the door shut behind her with a hollow clang. The stairway to the tower twisted like the inside of a shell. The air grew colder with each step Lyra climbed. A single torch flickered in the guard's hand, throwing trembling light across the damp walls. Every sound, each scrape of a boot, each breath, echoed until it seemed a dozen invisible people followed behind them. The fortress was not built for comfort. Its stones were black and uneven, sweating moisture that dripped into small puddles. The scent of salt and old blood mingled with the chill. Lyra kept her arms close to her body, careful not to brush against the guards' armor. They avoided looking at her, their faces set and pale. One of them muttered a prayer under his breath as they reached the final landing. When they stopped before a heavy iron door wrapped in silver chains, Lyra knew they had arrived. The door pulsed faintly as if it breathed. Symbols glowed on its surface, warding marks to hold something terrible inside. The taller guard cleared his throat. No one opens this door unless ordered by Lord Corwin himself. You'll have food brought once a day. Do not shout, do not run, and above all, do not touch His Majesty. Lyra nodded, though her stomach tightened. What am I meant to do if he speaks? The guard's eyes flicked toward her and away again. Answer quietly. If he roars, drop to the floor. If he changes. He stopped himself, swallowed. If that happens, pray. The second guard hesitated before adding. He was a good man once. Lyra met his eyes. And now? The guard didn't answer. He turned the key. The locks clanked one by one, echoing up and down the stairwell. When the last chain fell aside, the air that rushed out smelled of cold stone and despair. The door groaned open. Inside, the chamber was vast and dim, lit only by the moonlight that spilled through a narrow window high in the wall. Shattered furniture lay scattered, a table split in half, a chair crushed against the stones. Deep claw marks scored the floor. And in the center of the room, half in shadow, knelt the king. He was larger than she expected, a figure of coiled strength, even bowed under the weight of thick silver chains that wrapped his chest and arms. His long black hair hung in damp strands over his face. Every breath he took made the chains tremble. The guards remained at the doorway. Stay alive if you can, one muttered before pulling the door closed behind her. The sound of the bolts sliding home echoed like a death knell. Silence followed, thick, alive, waiting. Lyra's heartbeat was too loud in her ears. She took a slow step forward, her bare feet soundless on the cold floor. The moonlight reached the king's shoulder and glinted off the metal cuffs. Beneath them, his skin was pale but traced with faint dark lines that seemed to move beneath the surface like smoke in glass. He spoke without turning his head. His voice was low and rough, like gravel dragged over stone. Another one. Lyra froze. Your Majesty. Don't call me that. The chains rattled as he shifted. They send one every month. Omegas with soft voices and gentler hearts. They die the same way. She swallowed. Then why do they keep sending them? A bitter sound escaped him, half laugh, half growl. Hope, or guilt. Hard to tell the difference. For a moment, she considered remaining silent. But something in his tone, something tired, human, made her speak again. I'm not like the others. That earned his attention. Slowly, the king turned his head. The moonlight caught his face, and she saw what the curse had done. One of his eyes was the gray of storm clouds, sharp and alive. The other burned faintly red, a color that didn't belong to any living thing. Black veins traced from that eye across his temple and down his neck, pulsing faintly. His gaze met hers and held it. "No, Wolf," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "I can feel the emptiness in you." "Yes," she said quietly. "I was born without one." He laughed again, softer this time. "Then Corwin is more cunning than I thought. He sends me an empty vessel, hoping my hunger will starve." Lyra took another step, careful and slow. "I'm not here because I chose to be." "No one ever is," he said. The chains creaked as he sat back against the wall, watching her through his tangled hair. "Tell me, wolfless one, what did they promise you? Gold, freedom, a quick death?" "Nothing," she said. "They sold me." He went still. For a moment, even the cursed marks on his skin seemed to quiet. "Sold," he repeated. Then he shook his head, a harsh motion. "Humans are still better monsters than I'll ever be." Lyra didn't know what to say to that. The silence stretched between them, heavy and strange. She could sense his pain the way one feels thunder before it sounds, a pressure at the edge of thought. It was raw and deep, twisting through his aura like thorns. She knelt a few paces away, not daring to move closer. "You're in pain." He gave a low, humorless smile. "An excellent observation." "It's loud," she said before thinking. When he frowned, she added quickly, "I can feel it. Like a noise under my skin. I don't know why." He tilted his head slightly, curious despite himself. "You feel it?" "Yes. And it doesn't break you?" "Not yet." For the first time, something almost like surprise flickered in his gray eye. Then he looked away. "You're either brave or foolish." "Both, probably," she said softly. His mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. "You shouldn't speak to me like that." "Why not?" "Because I might remember what it's like to be human," he said. Neither of them spoke for a while after that. The only sound was the wind moaning through the high window and the slow rattle of the chains whenever the king moved. Lyra stayed where she was until exhaustion pulled at her limbs. When she finally lay down on the cold stone floor, she whispered into the silence, "Good night, Your Majesty." Then from the shadows his voice came, quieter than before. "There is no majesty here, girl. Only ruin." But when she closed her eyes, the sound of his breathing was steady, and for the first time perhaps in years so was his. Lyra woke to the sound of metal straining. A growl rumbled through the room, low and animal. For one dizzy moment she thought the tower itself was alive. The king was awake. The chains around him pulled taut as his body trembled against them. The veins along his arms glowed faintly red. The cursed energy in the air prickled like static. "Stay back," he hissed. "The shadows rising." She pushed herself up. "What can I do?" "Nothing," he snarled. "Just don't speak. Don't." His words broke off in a roar that shook the window. The silver links smoked where they touched his skin. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, heart racing, but she couldn't look away. The transformation wasn't complete, yet it was terrifying. His back arched, muscles knotting, and for a moment she saw something like black fire crawling beneath his skin. Chains held. Slowly the shaking subsided. He sagged forward, gasping, sweat darkening his shirt. When he lifted his head again, the red in his eye had dimmed. Lyra took a cautious step toward him. "Is it over?" "For now," he said, voice raw. "It always comes back." She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Does anything help?" He gave a bitter laugh. "Once, perhaps. Prayers. The sound of a pack running under the moon. Now, only silence." "I could try to make it quieter," she said. He looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "I told you I can feel your pain. Maybe I can calm it a little. I've done it before, with animals, with people. It's like closing a wound you can't see." He stared at her for a long time. And why would you risk touching a cursed king? Because you're still breathing, she said simply. That means there's still something to save. His lips parted but no sound came. He turned his face away. Do what you want. She knelt again, closer than before. The air around him was cold, humming with restrained fury. She didn't reach for him, just let her voice fill the silence. Tell me about before. What you remember. He exhaled slowly. Why? Because maybe remembering will help. For a moment he didn't answer. Then in a voice so low she had to lean forward to hear, he said, Before the war, I had a wolf named Ardis. We were one breath, one will. When I died on the battlefield, the witch who loved me tried to bring me back. She used the shadow between worlds. It returned me but not him. The wolf came back wrong. Lyra listened, her heart tightening. And now he hates me, Rowan said. He wants to finish what death began. You fight him. Every day. The moonlight touched his face again, revealing the exhaustion carved deep into it. His gray eye met hers. And what do you see when you look at me, wolfless one? She held his gaze. A man who's still fighting. He blinked, as if the words startled him. You shouldn't lie to comfort me. I'm not lying, she said. If you'd given up, I'd already be dead. A quiet sound escaped him, halfway between a sigh and a laugh. You're either braver or more foolish than I thought. I told you, she said, a small smile tugging at her mouth. Both. Something in him softened at that. The tension in his shoulders eased. The air in the room grew lighter, just enough for her to breathe properly again. He watched her for a long time before speaking. They'll come for you in the morning, he said finally. If you wish to leave, I'll ask Corwin to send you away before the next moon. And if I stay, then you'll die here like the rest. Maybe, she said quietly. But not tonight. She moved to the far corner where the wall met the window and sat down. You should try to sleep. He didn't answer. She could still feel his gaze on her long after she closed her eyes. When dawn crept through the window, soft and gray, Lyra woke to find the king still watching her. His face was unreadable, but his voice when he finally spoke was almost gentle. You didn't run. No, she said. You told me not to. For a moment his mouth curved, the faintest shadow of a smile. Then he looked away toward the light. Outside, the first rays of morning touched the black stones of Hollowspire, but inside the tower a small, uncertain peace lingered, fragile as glass yet real. A week passed inside the tower. To Lyra it felt both endless and strangely still, as if time had been slowed by the heavy air. Every morning the guards brought food and left without a word. Every evening she told herself she would sleep, but the strange hush of the place kept her half awake, listening to the breathing of the king bound in chains. Rowan spoke little at first. When he did, his voice sounded scraped clean of emotion, like metal rubbed dull by years of use. Why do you not cry? He asked one morning as she laid a small loaf of bread near him. I did, she said. A long time ago. It didn't help. He gave a faint grunt that might have been approval. Tears are wasted here. Yet that same evening, when the wind howled through the window slit, he told her to move closer to the hearth. The cold in this tower eats bone, he said. It was the first thing he had offered that sounded like concern. Lyra obeyed, drawing a stool nearer the embers. Do you ever sleep? Sometimes, he answered. When the beast sleeps. Does it have a name? She asked carefully. Rowan's eyes lifted to hers. The gray one looked almost human again. The cursed one glimmered faintly red. It once shared mine. Now I call it nothing. Names give things power. Lyra studied him. Beneath the worn chains and the darkness, she saw a man who had been taught command but was learning humility through pain. If it ever listens, she said, maybe it still remembers the name. That made him fall silent for a long while. Then very softly he said, You sound like someone who believes monsters can be forgiven. I think they can be understood, she replied. That's a start. He looked at her a moment longer, then turned away as if hiding a thought he didn't wish her to see. That night, as she lay near the dying fire, she dreamt of a vast field of silver grass under the moon. In the distance she saw a wolf pacing inside a ring of shadow. It looked at her, and for a heartbeat its eyes were not red at all but the same storm gray as Rowan's. When she woke, her cheeks were wet, and she couldn't tell whether she had been crying for herself or for him. Days slid by in this strange rhythm of quiet words and half-trust. Sometimes when he felt the curse clawing at him, she would talk about small, ordinary things. The market stalls in her old town, the smell of spring rain, the way her mother used to hum while baking bread. He listened not to the stories themselves but to the calm inside her voice. Once, after she spoke of her childhood, he said quietly, "You speak as though peace were still possible." "It can be," she said. "It just looks different now." He almost smiled. "You are either very wise or very foolish." "Both," she answered, and the ghost of laughter passed between them. Far below the tower, in the candle-lit council chamber of Hollowspire, Lord Corwin Vane studied a mirror framed in black iron. Within its glass shimmered a blurred image of the tower's interior. The chained king, the pale girl beside him, the faint shimmer of magic between them. So the girl lives, he thought. Not only lives, speaks, and the king listens. He frowned, fingers drumming the table. "Too well," he murmured. "Much too well." The old steward standing nearby shifted uneasily. "Perhaps she soothes him, my lord." That was the purpose of the tributes. Corwin's expression darkened. "I do not want him soothed, I want him contained. Hope makes men dangerous." He waved the steward away and turned back to the mirror. The faint image of Lyra's face caught the light, her expression thoughtful as she watched the cursed king. Corwin's lips tightened. If she quiets him completely, the court will start whispering of miracles. And miracles have a way of dethroning regents. He closed his hand over the mirror until the light died. Up in the tower, Rowan sat with his back to the wall, watching the faint shimmer of daylight crawl across the floor. He had been remembering the witch who cursed him, the friend he had betrayed without meaning to. When Lyra spoke, her voice broke the spiral of memory. "You knew her, didn't you? The one who cast the spell." Rowan's head turned sharply. "Who told you that?" "No one," she said. "I guessed. The way you talk about her, it's not only anger. There's sorrow." He exhaled. "Sorrow is too small a word." "Then what happened?" He stared at the floor for a while before answering. "Her name was Mira. We fought together in the witch wars. She saved my life more times than I deserved. I promised to protect her. But when the peace came, the council demanded her power be bound. I agreed to it." His jaw tightened. "I thought I was saving the realm. I killed her instead." Lyra's voice softened. "And she cursed you." "She cursed my wolf," he said. "And through him me. Every rage I buried, every guilt I refused to face, it became the creature you saw." Silence settled between them again, filled only by the whisper of wind. Lyra wanted to say something that would ease the weight in his words, but nothing seemed enough. Finally she said, "Then maybe the curse isn't only punishment. Maybe it's a demand, that you forgive yourself." He gave a dry laugh. "Forgiveness is a luxury of the innocent." "You're alive," she said. "That means you still have a choice." He met her eyes. "You speak of choice as if it were a candle I could simply light again." "Maybe it is," she said. "You just need a spark." That night the storm broke over Hollowspire. Rain hammered the roof like 1,000 fists. Thunder rolled so loud it shook the chains that bound the king. Lyra sat awake, watching the flashes of light crawl across his face. "You should sleep," he said without looking at her. "So should you," she answered. "I can't. The storm stirs it. The curse." He nodded once. "It hungers in moments like this." She rose, walked slowly to the center of the room, and crouched near him but kept a respectful distance. "Then I'll tell you a story until it passes." He looked at her in disbelief. A story? Yes, she said. That's what my mother did when storms frightened me. He gave a half smile. And what tale does a wolfless girl tell a cursed king? One about the sea. Her voice was calm, steady, filling the room like warm light. She spoke of the coast where she was born, of fishermen who sang to the waves, of gulls that cried over silver water. She described how the sea looked at dawn, blue-gray, endless, forgiving. While she spoke, Rowan's breathing slowed. The tension in his shoulders eased. For a moment he forgot the weight of the chains and simply listened. When she finished, he said quietly, "You make it sound peaceful." "It is," she said. "You should see it someday." "Perhaps," he murmured. "If I'm ever free." "You will be," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. He studied her face, the candlelight reflecting in his mismatched eyes. "You believe that?" "Yes." He looked away quickly, as if the belief itself hurt to see. "You shouldn't," he whispered. "Belief is how people break." "Then let it break me first," she said. "At least someone will have tried." He had no answer for that. When dawn came, the storm had passed. The air smelled clean, almost sweet. Rowan sat in the same place, eyes closed, as if still listening to her story in his mind. Lyra moved to the window slit and watched light spill over the forest below. For the first time she saw color in the world beyond the tower. Moss-green hills, the silver line of the river. Felt like a promise, faint but real. Behind her the king spoke. "You stayed awake all night. I wanted to be sure you were still yourself." He gave a short laugh. "And am I?" He turned. "You are more than the curse wants you to be." He regarded her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he said. "Perhaps you're right." And for a heartbeat, the air around him shimmered, not dark red but pale silver like dawn light catching water. It vanished almost at once, yet Lyra saw it, and he did too. He met her eyes. "What did you do?" "Nothing," she said. "Maybe the story helped." "Or maybe," he said softly, "you did." Below the tower, Lord Corwin paced the council chamber, unaware of the faint silver light flickering high above him. He was already drafting letters to distant nobles, warning that the curse had grown worse. Soon, he thought, the council would beg him to assume the crown in truth. But in the tower, the thing he feared most was beginning instead, a change neither spell nor sword could stop. The cursed king had started to hope. And the wolfless girl, without meaning to, had given him the first piece of peace he had known in years. The days inside Hollowspire no longer crawled, they breathed. The silence was still heavy, yet not entirely cruel. Lyra had learned to listen to it, the faint rhythm of chains, the wind creeping through narrow windows, the heartbeat of a man who refused to surrender to darkness. She spent mornings cleaning the chamber, sweeping away dust and broken wood. Small acts that brought shape back to the ruined room. At first Rowan watched in silence, suspicion flickering through his mismatched eyes. On the third morning he said, "You make it look like a place someone might live." "That's the idea," she answered, setting a cracked jug upright. "If you live in ruin too long, you start to think you are one." He almost smiled, though it looked strange on him. "You talk as if you've done this before." "I've lived among ruins," she said simply. When she was finished, she sat a safe distance away and asked if he would let her try something. "What sort of something?" "I want to see if I can quiet the curse when it rises. Not by touch, just by feeling." He frowned. "Feeling can be dangerous here." "I know," she said. "But I can sense the pain inside you even when you're still. Maybe I can take a little of it away." He studied her, half wary, half curious. "And if it consumes you, then at least you'll know someone tried." Rowan said nothing more. He closed his eyes and exhaled once, giving silent permission. Lyra steadied her breathing and let her awareness widen. The world around her dimmed until only the sound of his heartbeat filled the air. She felt the jagged pulse of the curse, sharp, restless, burning against her senses like ice. She didn't push at it. She only imagined cool water flowing through it, imagined a light that was quiet and kind. Slowly the thrum eased. The air in the room softened. Rowan opened his eyes. The red glow had faded. "What did you do?" "Listened," she said. "Then told it to rest." He shook his head in disbelief. "You speak to shadows as if they obey you." "They don't obey," she said with a faint smile. "They listen when they're tired of screaming." He stared at her a long moment. "You shouldn't be real. I've been told that before." From that evening the ritual began. Whenever the curse stirred, she sat nearby, breathing evenly, murmuring fragments of stories, of rivers, of sunlight on grain, of anything gentle. The storms inside him shortened. His voice grew steadier. The chains no longer rattled as fiercely when nightmares struck. One night, after a long silence, he said, "You remind me of the sound before dawn." Lyra looked up. "Quiet. Hopeful," he said. Far below the tower, Corwin received reports that the guards no longer heard the king's roars. He dismissed them with irritation. "Silence," he muttered, "is only the pause before collapse." Yet unease lingered in him. For the first time in years, Hollowspire was too calm. The next morning Lyra descended the stair for the first time since her arrival. A guard had come to the tower door with a message. "Lord Vane summons you." She followed in wary silence, her bare feet cold against the stone steps. The lower halls smelled of wax and damp parchment. When the guards opened the great oak doors to the council chamber, she saw Corwin seated behind a long table covered with scrolls. He looked up as though mildly surprised she was still alive. "So," he said, "the tower hasn't swallowed you." "No, my lord." He gestured for her to sit. "You've lasted longer than most. Tell me, what trick keeps my nephew calm?" "No trick," she said carefully. "I listened to him." Corwin's brow arched. "You listened to a monster." "To the man inside him," she corrected. For a heartbeat his smile slipped, then returned sharper. "Romantic nonsense. The curse will eat him eventually, and you with him." Lyra's hands tightened in her lap. "If it hasn't yet, perhaps it never will." Corwin rose and walked around the table, stopping behind her chair. "You think you're saving him. You're a temporary curiosity, nothing more. When he breaks again, the council will blame you. They'll call you witch, heretic, traitor. I could spare you that fate if you leave quietly." He reached into his cloak and dropped a small pouch onto the table. It jingled with gold. "Take it. There's a trader leaving for the southern ports at dusk. Disappear, and you'll live comfortably." Lyra stared at the pouch, then lifted her eyes to him. "You're afraid." He laughed, though his voice was too sharp. "Of a wolfless girl." "Of hope," she said. "Because if he's cured, you lose the throne you've already claimed in your heart." His expression hardened. "Careful, girl. I'm not your subject," she replied, rising. "And he's not your pawn." Corwin leaned closer, his breath cold. "The king's curse is a warning from the gods. Interfere, and you'll join him in damnation." "I'll take my chances," she said. With that she turned and walked to the door. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to stop her. Corwin's voice followed, low and venomous. "He cannot protect you forever." She didn't look back. "He doesn't have to. I protect him." The walk back to the tower felt longer than before. She carried the weight of Corwin's words like frost on her skin, yet her resolve only deepened. When she entered the upper chamber again, Rowan looked up from where he sat unchained beside the hearth. The guards had begun trusting him enough to grant small freedoms. "You were gone long," he said. "Your uncle wanted to frighten me." "Did he succeed?" "No," she said, and then softer. "But I think he'll try something worse." Rowan's jaw tightened. "He always does." She told him of the threat, of the gold he offered. When she finished, Rowan stood and faced the window, his profile carved by light. "He fears you then." "Fears what I might make you," she said. Rowan turned. "And what is that?" "Whole." For a long heartbeat neither spoke. Then he crossed to her and took her hand, hesitating as if uncertain whether he was allowed such contact. The moment his fingers brushed hers, the cursed lines on his wrist dimmed, turning from black to gray. He noticed, so did she. Lyra's breath caught. It worked. He looked down at their joined hands. Your gift. It's stronger than you knew. She squeezed lightly before letting go. Then we'll use it. Against Corwin. Against the curse, she said. And all the darkness he feeds. That night, as moonlight spilled across the floor, Lyra knelt near the sleeping king and whispered into the stillness. You're not alone, Rowan Vane. He didn't stir, but a faint glimmer of silver light moved beneath his skin, gentle as the tide. Far below, Corwin stood by his mirror once more. This time the glass showed nothing, only his own reflection staring back at him. The silence unnerved him more than any vision. He touched the mirror's edge and felt a tremor, as if another will had pushed his out. She's learning, he muttered. And he's waking. His hand closed into a fist. Then we'll see what breaks first, her faith or his heart. The following morning began like every other. A thin blade of light creeping through the window slit, dust turning golden as it drifted. Yet everything inside the tower felt sharper, alive in a new way. Rowan was no longer just a shadowed figure in chains. He was a man beginning to stand inside his own skin again. He was pacing slowly when Lyra woke. The chains still ringed his wrists, but the guards had lengthened them so he could move about the chamber. The sound of the links followed him like a second heartbeat. You dream, he said without turning. I heard you whisper my name. Lyra sat up embarrassed. Then I was talking in my sleep. I didn't say I minded, he replied. It's the first time anyone's spoken my name without fear in years. She smiled faintly. You should hear it more often. He turned toward her. You give me that name as though it still belongs to a king. I am no such thing. You are, she said, if you choose to be. Rowan's expression darkened. Choice was taken from me long ago. Then take it back, she said. That's what being alive means. He was silent for a while. Then he sat across from her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. Lyra, why do you care so much about saving me? Because you keep trying, she answered simply. I can't ignore that. Her answer seemed to unsettle him. He studied her face as though searching for some trick. You believe I deserve saving. I believe no one's beyond it. He leaned forward slightly. Not even the man who destroyed his kingdom. Not even him. The chains between them glinted faintly as he reached out. His hand stopped inches from hers. You're unwise to speak to me like this. Then I'll be unwise, she whispered. He looked down, shaking his head, a rough laugh escaping. You risk everything for faith. And you risk nothing for fear, she countered. That silenced him. Outside, thunder rolled distantly. It wasn't a storm yet, only a warning. After a long pause, he said, When I died on the battlefield, I thought the gods would forget me. Instead they sent me back bound to the thing I hate most. My own rage. The curse feeds on every failure I remember. That's why I can't rule. I destroy what little peace remains. Then let someone stand beside you, she said. You don't have to carry it alone. His eyes flicked up to hers again, a flash of disbelief and something else. Hope, raw and dangerous. And you would stand beside a monster. I would stand beside a man who's trying not to be one. He exhaled sharply, as if struck. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, Corwin was right about one thing. You are dangerous. Because I speak the truth. Because you make me want to believe it, he said. The words hung between them like sparks. Neither spoke again until the fire sank to embers. When she finally drifted into sleep, Rowan sat watching her, the corners of his mouth softening into something that might one day be peace. The storm came at dusk, carried by a wind smelling of soot and far-off fire. Clouds pressed so low that lightning painted the walls silver. The guards barred the heavy doors and fled down the stairs, muttering prayers. Only Rowan and Lyra remained. "The air feels wrong," she said. "It's not just a storm," Rowan answered. "The curse stirs when the world remembers fire." Thunder broke so loud it rattled the chains. The veins beneath his skin darkened. Lyra could see the tremor running through his hands. "Talk to me," she said quickly. "Tell me something from before." He gritted his teeth. Before there was a palace by the river. Gardens that smelled of lemon and cedar. I used to walk there with my father. His voice roughened. He said a king should love his people as a wolf loves his pack. I failed him. "No," she said. "You lost him. That's not the same." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You argue with lightning. Then I'll argue louder." Another crack of thunder shook the tower. The chains flared bright, burning his wrists. He dropped to one knee, eyes blazing red. "Lyra, you should go." She knelt beside him. "I'm not leaving." The air thickened with heat and shadow. The curse swelled like a tide. She felt it trying to swallow the man before her. Desperate, she caught his face between her palms. "Listen to me," she said. "You are Rowan Vane, son of Eldmere, king of your people. You are not this darkness." The red in his eyes flickered. "I can't." "Yes, you can," she whispered. "Breathe with me." She drew in air slowly. After a moment he matched her. Once, twice again. The glow under his skin dimmed. When he opened his eyes, the red had receded, leaving only gray. Rain began to fall outside, soft at first, then steady. The storm eased, as if the tower itself exhaled. He sagged forward, catching his weight on his hands. Lyra reached out to steady him, but he caught her wrist gently instead. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. "If the curse had broken free." "It didn't," she said. "You stopped it." He looked up, rain light glinting off his damp hair. "No, you did." They stayed like that for a long while. Her hand caught in his, the storm fading to a whisper around them. When at last she drew back, he said quietly, "You saved my life again." "You saved your own," she replied. "I just reminded you how." A thin smile touched his mouth. "You'll run out of reminders eventually. Then I'll start repeating them." Later, after she had fallen asleep near the hearth, Rowan stood at the window watching the rain strike the courtyard stones. Ash mixed with the water, gray flakes swirling like ghosts. For the first time since the curse, he felt warmth not born of fire but of something gentler. He turned toward her sleeping form and murmured, "Perhaps monsters can learn." Down in the council chamber, Corwin's messenger arrived, soaked and panting. "My lord, the storm struck hard, but the tower stands. The king lives." Corwin's jaw clenched. "Still." The messenger hesitated. "The guards say the howls stopped. They say he spoke her name." Corwin dismissed him with a wave, though unease pricked his spine. If Rowan was speaking again, if he was remembering, then power was slipping from Corwin's hands like sand. He poured himself a glass of wine and stared into it until the reflection of his own face blurred. "Let him hope," he whispered. "Hope makes the fall deeper." At dawn the rain stopped. The air smelled clean, almost sweet. Lyra woke to find Rowan standing unchained, looking out at the new light. The guards had left the door unlocked for the first time. "They trust you," she said. He turned to her. "They trust what you've made of me." "I only reminded you what you were," she said again. "Then keep reminding me," he replied softly. "I may yet remember how to be a king." She smiled, though her eyes stung. "You already are Rowan Vane." Outside, the sun rose through thinning clouds, casting hollow spire in gold instead of gray. Far below, Corwin watched the same sunrise from a balcony and thought it looked too much like a beginning. By the second sunrise after the storm, the entire fortress had changed its rhythm. Servants who once crept through the halls began to speak in normal tones again. Guards no longer stood watch with spears clutched tight to their chests. The endless echo of despair that had haunted Hollowspire for years seemed to retreat a little each morning. Lyra didn't see the difference at first. She only felt it. The tower felt warmer, the air easier to breathe. When she carried water to Rowan, she noticed the chains had been loosened even more. "You've frightened them," she said lightly. "They don't know what to do with a peaceful king." Rowan looked up from the parchment he had been marking with trembling hands. "I haven't been peaceful. Just quiet. Quiet is a start." He set down the charcoal stick. The faintest smile touched his face. "You sound like someone who believes I might survive this." "I do," she said. "You should too." Rowan leaned back against the wall, looking out through the narrow window. "The world outside this tower feels unreal now. Sometimes I can almost imagine it doesn't exist." "It does," she said. "And it's waiting for you." He turned to study her. "What would I do if I left this place?" "Live," she said simply. "Fix what's been broken." "Do you think they would forgive me?" "Maybe not," she said. "But you could forgive yourself." That thought hung in the air between them like a fragile light. After a moment he reached for the parchment again and began to write slowly, awkwardly, as though relearning his own name. "What are you writing?" she asked. "Orders," he said. "Not for battle. For rebuilding. If Corwin controls the council, he's ruled by fear. I'll send word to the border towns first. Supplies, grain, whatever's been withheld." Lyra smiled. "You remember how to be a king after all." He didn't answer. But the next time she looked at him, she saw color in his face that hadn't been there before. By nightfall, whispers of the king's recovery reached the lower courtyards. The cooks muttered that someone had heard laughter echo from the tower. The guards, who once swore the chains would hold forever, began to bet how long until they were removed completely. Corwin heard the whispers too. Each one struck like a needle. He dismissed his attendants and stood before the great mirror once again. "Show me," he said. The surface of the glass shimmered. At first it reflected only his own image. Then the haze cleared. He saw Lyra and Rowan sitting across from one another by the hearth, talking softly. The light in the room was gold instead of gray. The curse marks on Rowan's arms were faint, almost healed. Corwin's jaw tightened. "So it's true," he whispered. "She's undone my work." The reflection blurred again, as if the mirror itself recoiled from his anger. "I made you weak once, nephew," he murmured. "I can do it again." He summoned his steward. "Prepare a carriage. I ride to Hollowspire at dawn." At the same hour in the tower, Lyra was dreaming. She dreamt of a river made of silver light, flowing between two worlds. On one bank stood Rowan, no longer chained, his eyes clear. On the other stood a shadow wearing Corwin's face. When she reached for Rowan, the shadow turned the river black. She woke gasping. Rowan stirred beside the hearth. "Another dream." "Yes," she said, rubbing her eyes. "It's nothing." He studied her quietly. "You said that the first night you arrived. Dreams mean something here. What did you see?" She hesitated. "Your uncle. Coming for you." He exhaled slowly. "Then the dream may be true." By midday the next day, the sound of hooves and shouting rose from the lower courtyard. Lyra looked out through the window slit and saw the line of black carriages entering through the gates. Even from that height she recognized the silver wolf sigil gleaming on their sides. "He's here," she said. Rowan's expression didn't change, but his hands clenched. "Corwin never comes without reason. Will he try to hurt you?" "He'll try to control me," Rowan said. "It's what he's always done." She turned toward him. "Then we won't let him." He looked at her with something like wonder. "You say we, as if you share my crown." "Someone has to," she said. A shadow of a smile crossed his lips. "Very well, my queen of defiance." The title made her flush, but before she could answer, the tower door creaked open. Two guards entered, bowing. "My lord, the regent requests your presence in the hall." Rowan rose. "Unchain me." The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. "That's an order," he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. They obeyed. The chains fell away, hitting the stone with a heavy sound. Lyra watched him straighten, taller now, the lines of his shoulders firm. The curse marks glimmered faintly but did not flare. He looked for the first time like the king carved into the tapestries of old. He turned to her. "Stay close but say nothing unless I ask." "I understand." They descended the long stair together. When they reached the great hall, the air inside was tense with expectation. Courtiers, guards, and servants lined the walls. At the far end, under the banners of the realm, stood Lord Corwin Vane. He smiled as Rowan entered, though his eyes were cold. "Your Majesty," he said with mocking formality, "what a joy to find you standing." Rowan stopped several paces away. "Spare the pretense, Corwin. What brings the regent to the prison he built?" "A visit," Corwin said smoothly. "To see if the beast still breathes." Rowan's gaze hardened. "You kept me chained like an animal for years." "I kept the kingdom safe," Corwin replied, "until this girl arrived." His eyes flicked toward Lyra. "You filled his head with dangerous ideas." "She gave me something you never could," Rowan said. "Truth." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Corwin's smile faltered. "Truth. The truth is that you are cursed beyond redemption. This creature has merely dulled your pain long enough to make you forget it." Lyra stepped forward despite Rowan's warning. "He hasn't forgotten. He's fighting it. And he's winning." Corwin turned on her. "Silence, girl. You have no place here." "She has every place," Rowan said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the hall like thunder. "She stayed when every soldier fled. She spoke when every priest surrendered. She reminded me what a king is." Corwin's eyes narrowed. "Then she's your downfall." "No," Rowan said. "She's my beginning." For a heartbeat the two men faced each other, the air between them crackling. Then Corwin's composure cracked. "You think I'll let you take back the throne? The council would never." "The council will follow its true ruler," Rowan interrupted. "If you doubt it, summon them." Corwin's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "You would destroy everything I built." "You built fear," Rowan said. "I will build peace." The hall erupted in murmurs again, half disbelief, half awe. Corwin raised his hand sharply. "Guards! Arrest them both." The soldiers hesitated. None moved. Rowan's presence, tall, calm, almost radiant, held them frozen. The curse that once made them tremble now seemed to protect him. Finally Corwin realized his command would go unanswered. He sneered. "Then I'll do it myself." He drew a dagger from his belt and lunged forward. Rowan didn't flinch. The dagger's tip never reached him. A flare of silver light burst between them, hurling Corwin backward. The light came from Lyra, standing just behind Rowan, her hands outstretched. Her eyes glowed with the same silver hue. When the brightness faded, Corwin lay stunned on the floor. The dagger clattered away. The court stared in silence. Rowan turned to her slowly. "What did you do?" "I don't know," she whispered. "It just happened." He looked at her with awe. "You carry the other half of the curse." "What do you mean?" "The witch who cursed me used light and shadow both. The shadow stayed with me. The light must have been waiting for you." Before either could speak again, Corwin pushed himself upright, fury twisting his face. "You think this changes anything? The council will brand you both heretics. They'll burn this fortress to ash." Rowan faced him calmly. "Then they'll see the truth in the flames." He turned to the guards. "Take the regent to the lower cells. He will answer for treason before the realm." No one disobeyed. Two soldiers moved forward, seizing Corwin's arms. As they dragged him away, his eyes burned with hatred. "You've only delayed your doom," he hissed. "The curse will claim you yet." Rowan watched him go, then turned to Lyra. "Perhaps," he said softly. "But not today." The hall fell silent once more. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds, filling the windows with gold. For the first time in years, the light reached the throne where no one had dared to sit. Rowan stepped toward it, then stopped and looked back at her. "Will you walk beside me, Lyra Dane?" She hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Always." Together they crossed the hall, the murmur of the court rising behind them, a sound that might one day grow into hope. The echo of Corwin's removal lingered long after the hall emptied. Rowan stood beside the throne, staring at it as though at a wound that hadn't healed. The carved wolves along its arms glimmered faintly in the morning light, the silver inlay tarnished from years of neglect. Lyra stayed near him, hands folded, sensing that this was not a victory yet. It was a reckoning. He said quietly, "I remember sitting there the day I swore my oath. My father's crown felt heavier than iron. I told myself it was honor. Now I know it was guilt." Lyra looked up at him. "Guilt doesn't have to own you anymore." He turned to her with a faint smile. "You make it sound simple." "Nothing is simple," she said. "But it can be right." They stood in silence until the last of the guards withdrew. Then Rowan climbed the dais and rested his hands on the back of the throne. He didn't sit. He only touched it as if testing its weight through memory. "When Corwin dragged me to the tower, I thought I'd never touch this wood again," he murmured. "Now I wonder whether I should." "You should," she said. "Because this time you know what it costs." He turned to her. "And if the curse returns, then we face it together." Her words steadied him more than any vow could have. Slowly, Rowan lowered himself into the seat of kings. The hall filled with light, not fierce but warm, spilling down from the stained windows. For a moment it seemed to breathe through the walls themselves. The silver veins on his hands flickered, then settled into stillness. He looked down at them and whispered, "It's quiet." Lyra's throat tightened. "Then it's working." Rowan exhaled, a sound between relief and disbelief. "I thought this day would come only in dreams." "Then let's make sure it lasts beyond waking," she said. By evening, messengers had carried the news through the fortress. The cursed king had taken the throne again. Some called it a miracle, others a warning. Still, no one denied that the air inside Hollowspire felt different. Lighter, freer. In the upper tower, Lyra looked out over the courtyard. Workers were clearing the scorched stones, soldiers polishing old armor that hadn't gleamed in years. She could almost imagine the castle alive again. Rowan entered quietly behind her. His steps no longer dragged, they sounded certain. "The council arrives at dawn," he said. "They'll want proof that I'm fit to rule." "Then give them what they fear most," she said. "The truth." He smiled slightly. "You've made a habit of telling me what to do. Someone has to remind you you're human." He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "You've reminded me of more than that." Before she could answer, a bell rang from below, a low, hollow tone that vibrated through the stone. Rowan's smile vanished. "That's not the council," he said. "That's a warning." They reached the outer courtyard moments later. The sky had turned the color of iron, heavy with an unnatural wind. Soldiers gathered at the walls, pointing toward the forest beyond the moat. The trees there swayed though no breeze touched them. A dark mist crept through the branches, thick and pulsing like breath. Lyra felt it first, a cold pressure against her chest. "Rowan," she whispered, "this isn't Corwin." He nodded grimly. "No, this is older." The mist parted. From it stepped a figure in a tattered cloak the color of night. Her hair streamed behind her like smoke, her eyes burning pale as the moon. When she lifted her hand, the guards' torches flared blue and died. "Mira," Rowan breathed. The witch's voice carried across the distance, neither loud nor soft but everywhere at once. "You remember me then?" "How could I forget?" She smiled faintly. "You were my king once. Gave you life. You repaid me with betrayal. Lyra saw the pain in his face. He didn't mean to. Mira said, her gaze sliding to Lyra. And you must be the light he found to replace me. Lyra stood tall. He doesn't need to replace anyone. He's finding himself. The witch's smile sharpened. And you think you can save him from the curse I made? Foolish child. That shadow was born of my blood. It belongs to me. Rowan stepped forward. If you want to end this, end it with me. Leave her out of it. Too late, Mira said. She carries what I left behind, the light half of my spell. You were never meant to be whole without her. Together, you are the curse and the cure. Lyra's breath caught. Then end it through us both. The witch raised her hand. The air shimmered, and the ground beneath them trembled. Darkness spilled from the forest like ink across paper, rising around the fortress walls. The soldiers shouted, some fleeing, others frozen. Rowan drew his sword, a relic that had hung untouched above the throne for years. Its blade flashed silver. Stay behind me, he said. No, Lyra answered. We do this together. The witch's laughter echoed like broken glass. Together, then. Let the gods decide which half deserves to live. She lifted both arms, and the sky split. Lightning without light tore through the clouds. The shadow in Rowan's blood surged awake. He staggered, dropping to one knee, the marks on his arms blazing red. Lyra caught him. Fight it. He clenched his teeth. It's stronger, she's feeding it. Lyra closed her eyes. She felt the heat of the curse pulsing under his skin, wild and desperate. She remembered what he'd told her. That names gave power. She whispered his name like a prayer. Rowan Vane. The glow around her hands flared silver. Light met shadow, sparking where they touched. Mira hissed, retreating a step. You can't hold both, the witch warned. The light will burn you. Lyra's voice trembled but held steady. Then let it burn. She pressed her palms to Rowan's chest. The world narrowed to sound and heat and memory. She saw flashes. Rowan as a boy chasing a wolf through tall grass, Mira bending over a wounded soldier, her own face lit by firelight. The curse was all of it. Rage, loss, love twisted into pain. She reached deeper until she felt the center of it. The moment he had chosen duty over the woman who loved him. That was where the shadow lived. She whispered, "Forgive her." Rowan's voice broke out of him like thunder. "Mira, I forgive you." The storm around them shattered. Light burst from their joined hands, silver and gold mingling. The witch cried out, a sound of fury and release. The darkness tore apart, dissolving into ash that the wind carried away. When the brilliance faded, Rowan was kneeling, Lyra's hands still against his heart. Mira stood a few paces away, her form flickering like a dying flame. For the first time she looked peaceful. "I waited centuries for those words," she whispered. "Now I can rest." Rowan bowed his head. "May the gods forgive us both." The witch smiled once, sadly, and vanished into light. The sky cleared. The fortress exhaled. The soldiers stared, astonished. The curse marks on Rowan's skin were gone. Lyra swayed, exhausted. Rowan caught her before she fell. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved us." She shook her head weakly. "We saved each other." He looked at her, something unspoken in his eyes. "You should rest. Only if you promise not to vanish when I wake." "I'm done vanishing," he said. That night the fires of Hollowspire burned bright for the first time in years, not as warning beacons but as celebration. The curse had lifted. The king was whole. In the quiet of the rebuilt tower, Rowan sat beside Lyra as she slept. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and cedar. He traced the lines of light that still lingered faintly on her palms, the marks she had taken from him. They pulsed gently like living silver. When she stirred, he said softly, "You once told me monsters could be understood. You were wrong." She blinked at him, puzzled. "Wrong." He smiled. "They can be forgiven." She smiled back, weary and bright. Then start with yourself. He did. Dawn crept across Hollowspire like a soft confession. After years of storms and whispers, the fortress was quiet, almost shy in its calm. The fires had burned low through the night, leaving only curls of smoke that rose toward a pale blue sky. In the upper tower, Rowan stood at the window. The horizon shimmered with morning mist, and far below, the river glimmered like a silver scar across the valley. He had watched that river as a boy, dreaming of a future he had nearly destroyed. Now somehow he was breathing in that future again. Behind him, Lyra stirred from sleep. The sunlight brushed her hair, turning it gold at the edges. She blinked and smiled faintly. "You didn't rest." "Kings rarely do," he said. His tone was soft, more amused than weary. "You're not just a king anymore," she said. "You're proof that curses can end." He turned to her. "And you're the reason it did." She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "You still talk as though I were a miracle." "I'm just me." He shook his head. "You're what the realm forgot how to believe in." Her smile faded. "Hope. Compassion," he said. "Hope is easy. Compassion takes courage." For a moment neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full, the kind that carried meaning without needing words. Lyra looked around the room. The repaired stonework, the newly polished floor, the sunlight on the banners that had once hung in tatters. Everything had changed, and yet something in her chest felt unsteady. "Rowan," she said quietly, "what happens now?" He met her gaze. "Now we rebuild. And after that," he hesitated. "After that, I ask the people to let me be their king again." "You think they'll refuse?" "They have every right to," he said. "I ruled through fear once. It's not easily forgotten." "Then show them the man who rose from it," she said. "The one who faced the witch, not with hatred but with mercy." He studied her a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You always find the path through the dark, don't you?" "I just walk until I find the light," she said. That afternoon, Rowan held his first council since reclaiming his throne. The great hall was filled with lords and envoys, their faces cautious but curious. Many had come expecting to see the cursed king still cloaked in shadow. Instead, they found a man who carried both dignity and weariness. His scars visible but no longer bleeding. He stood before them without his crown. "You know who I was," he began, voice low but sure. "You know what I became. The curse that haunted this land was mine to bear, but the silence that followed was yours to break. We all hid behind fear. No more." The murmurs quieted. Rowan continued. "The realm has been ruled by suspicion and punishment. That ends today. Hollowspire will open its gates to every province again. We will feed those who starve, rebuild the farms, restore the schools, and most of all, we will speak the truth about what happened here." An older noble rose. "And your regent, my lord? What fate awaits Lord Corwin?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "He will be tried, not for ambition but for cruelty. The law he twisted will judge him. If I am to rule with mercy, it must begin with him." The noble bowed slowly. "Then perhaps the gods have spared us for a reason." When the meeting ended, the council bowed as Rowan left the hall. No one called him beast or curseborn. They simply called him Majesty. Outside, the courtyard was alive with motion. Messengers rode in and out. Artisans carried planks and tools for repair. The fountain that had stood dry for a decade began to flow again. Rowan paused to watch the water spill from its cracked stone mouth. "It's strange," he said to Lyra, who had joined him. "Peace feels heavier than war." "That's because war gives you something to fight," she said. "Peace makes you face what you've lost." He nodded slowly. "Then let's face it together." That night, the fortress held a feast unlike any in memory. Tables filled the great hall, lit by lanterns strung between pillars. Music drifted from a small band of players, hesitant at first, then bold as laughter began to fill the room. Even the walls seemed to hum with relief. Lyra sat beside Rowan at the high table. The air smelled of roast venison and spiced wine. People kept raising their cups to the king who had survived death, and to the woman who had freed him. Halfway through the evening, a young soldier approached their table. "My lord," he said, "the people in the outer village have begun lighting candles. They say it's for the souls lost during the curse. They ask if you'll light the first one." Rowan stood. The hall fell quiet. He took a single candle from the soldier's tray and lit it from the torch beside him. "For those who died," he said, "and for those who lived on, may their memory guide our peace." He placed the candle in the center of the hall. One by one, others followed. Within minutes, hundreds of flames flickered together, their glow painting the stone with gold. Lyra watched, her eyes shining. When Rowan returned to his seat, she whispered, "You've given them back their light." He smiled. "No, you did." Weeks passed. The rhythm of the castle changed again, not to fear or despair, but to purpose. Rowan spent his mornings with advisors and his afternoons walking among the workers in the courtyards. Wherever he went, the people bowed, but not out of fear. Lyra followed him often, helping where she could, tending to the sick, teaching children to read letters on scraps of parchment salvaged from the ruined library. One evening, as the sun sank beyond the hills, Rowan found her by the fountain. She was kneeling beside a boy, showing him how to sound out the word home. When the child ran off laughing, Rowan said quietly, "You've rebuilt more than I have." She looked up. "I'm just teaching them words." "You're teaching them to believe again," he said. "That's harder." Lyra rose and wiped her hands. "Belief is contagious. So is kindness." He smiled, then turned serious. "The council wants me to tour the borderlands. They say the people need to see their king. I'd like you to come." Her heart skipped. "You want me to leave Hollowspire?" "I want you to remind the rest of the realm what healed this place," he said. "Your voice carries further than mine." She hesitated. "If I go, who keeps you steady?" He laughed softly. "You think I'll crumble the moment you turn away?" "Maybe not crumble," she said, smiling. "Just sulk." He gave her a mock scowl. "You've grown bold, Lyra Dane." "You taught me," she said. He looked at her then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Not the charged silence of fear or secrecy, but the quiet understanding of two souls who had walked through the same fire. They left Hollowspire a week later. The procession was small. A few guards, a healer, and the two of them on horseback. The countryside unfolded around them. Green hills, rivers that glittered under the sun, villages that lifted their heads as the king rode past. Children scattered petals in their path. Farmers raised their tools in salute. At one crossroads, an old woman approached, carrying a wreath of woven reeds. "For the wolf who found his heart again," she said, placing it in Rowan's hands. He bowed to her, eyes shining. "Thank you." As they rode on, Lyra said softly, "You've become a legend already." He smiled. "Then let's make sure it's the right kind." They reached the northern plains by dusk. Rowan dismounted and looked across the open fields where the witch wars had once burned the land black. Now wildflowers grew in the ashes, tiny blooms of violet and white, bending in the breeze. Lyra joined him. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It shouldn't be," he said. "This was the battlefield where everything ended." "Or began," she said. He turned to her. "You always find the song beneath the ashes." She smiled. "It's easier when someone else listens." They stood in silence, the wind tugging at their cloaks. After a while, Rowan said quietly, "When I look at this land, I remember what we lost. But when I look at you, I remember what we found." Lyra's heart ached in a way that wasn't pain. "Then let's keep finding it," she said. The sun slipped below the horizon, and the first stars appeared. Bright, steady, alive. Somewhere beyond them, the witch's soul, forgiven, might have been watching. The world she had once broken was healing, piece by piece, through two people who refused to let darkness have the final word. Rowan reached for Lyra's hand. For years I thought my curse was to walk alone. Maybe it was just waiting for you to walk beside me." She laced her fingers through his. "Then we walk on." And they did, into the starlit plain, where the scent of wildflowers rose from the ashes, and the promise of peace stretched further than the horizon. They rode for 7 days beneath a sky that shifted from blue to pewter and back again. The air in the north carried a sharper edge, wind that smelled of stone and pine, mountains whispering secrets older than any kingdom. The further they went, the quieter the villages grew, as though the land itself were listening. Rowan noticed it first. "They don't cheer here," he said. "They watch." Lyra, riding beside him, studied the faces in doorways and windows. The people looked neither angry nor fearful, only wary, as if uncertain whether the king before them was real. "They've lived with ghosts too long," she said. "They're not sure this isn't another one." "Then we'll remind them we're flesh and blood," Rowan said. At the next village, he dismounted and walked among the people without escort. Lyra followed, ignoring the guards' protests. A child darted behind a barrel as Rowan approached. An old man leaned on his cane and frowned. Rowan stopped before them. "My name is Rowan Vane," he said. "Once I failed you. Now I've come to listen." The old man's brow furrowed. "We heard you died. Then we heard you lived. Which is true?" Rowan smiled faintly. "Both in a way. The man I was is gone. The one who stands before you remembers his mistakes." A woman stepped forward from the crowd. "Then remember this," she said. "Our sons never came back from your wars." Rowan's voice softened. "Neither did my brothers. But if the dead still walk in our hearts, let their memory build what war destroyed." The silence that followed was heavy, uncertain, and then a single voice called, "Long live the king!" It was the child peeking out from behind the barrel. Laughter rippled through the villagers, light as the breaking of a spell. That night, the people brought them bread, cheese, and wine older than the curse itself. They lit torches along the streets for the first time in a generation. Rowan watched the light dance on the cobbles and said quietly, "It feels like the world is learning to breathe again." Lyra smiled. "So are you." The road wound upward into the mountains, where the wind spoke in voices that weren't quite wind at all. Legend said the spirits of wolves roamed there, the remnants of the first packs that guarded the realm. At the edge of a narrow pass, Lyra halted her horse and stared at the stone cairns lining the path. "Graves," she said. "Too many." Rowan dismounted and knelt beside one. "They buried the soldiers who never made it home." "My soldiers." He rested his palm on the cairn. "Forgive me," he murmured. "I gave you orders born of pride." When he rose, something strange happened. The wind shifted, carrying a faint, mournful howl that didn't sound entirely of this world. Lyra shivered. "Do you hear that?" Rowan nodded slowly. "They've been waiting for me too." As dusk fell, they camped beside the ruins of an old watchtower. The night was quiet until the fire burned low. Then a pale light began to move among the cairns. It flickered like foxfire, weaving between stones, until a single form took shape, a great wolf made of mist and memory, its eyes the color of moonlight. Rowan stood transfixed. "Ardis," he whispered. The spectral wolf tilted its head. For a heartbeat, Lyra thought she saw sorrow in its glowing eyes. It padded forward until its nose almost touched Rowan's chest. Then it breathed out, a gust of cold that stirred the ashes of the fire, and vanished. Lyra stepped closer. "Was that my wolf?" Rowan said softly. "The part of me the curse devoured. He's free now. Then your soul is whole." He looked at her, tears glinting in the firelight. "Ours," he corrected. "You freed him when you freed me." They continued north the next morning, the world bright and clear. Wherever they passed, people gathered to see the king who had once been a ghost. Children ran alongside the horses, women threw petals of mountain lilies. Even the wind seemed warmer. But on the 8th day, a messenger arrived at dawn, dust-covered, breathless, carrying a letter sealed with black wax. Rowan broke the seal and read silently. his jaw tightening. "What is it?" Lyra asked. "The council," he said. "They've declared Corwin's trial a matter of divine judgment. They plan to hold it in Hollowspire in 3 days. They want me there." "Divine judgment." Lyra frowned. "That's not justice. That's spectacle." Rowan folded the letter. "Then we'll make it truth." When they returned to Hollowspire, the sky was overcast, heavy with unfallen rain. The great courtyard was crowded with nobles, priests, and commoners alike. At the center stood a wooden platform ringed with torches, the place where judgment would be given. Corwin knelt at its center, chains at his wrists. He looked thinner, older, but the same cold sharpness lived in his eyes. When Rowan ascended the platform, the murmur of the crowd fell silent. Rowan spoke first. "Lord Corwin Vane, you are accused of treason, cruelty, and the unlawful imprisonment of your king. What do you say to these charges?" Corwin lifted his head. "I saved this realm when you could not. You call it treason, I call it loyalty. You were the curse, Rowan, not I." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Rowan didn't flinch. "You ruled by fear. I ruled by necessity," Corwin snapped. "If I hadn't, the realm would have torn itself apart while you howled in your chains." "And how many suffered to keep your throne steady?" Rowan asked. "How many starved while you dined on their silence?" Corwin's lips curved in a cruel smile. "Better they starve than burn. The witch's fire would have devoured us all if not for me." Lyra stepped forward. "It was mercy that ended the curse, not control. Mercy you never understood." Corwin turned his glare on her. "Ah yes, the wolfless girl. Tell me, how long before he forgets you too?" "Kings always do." The insult struck, but Rowan's expression didn't change. "You mistake my silence for weakness, uncle. It's restraint. Something you never learned." The high priest stepped forward, his white robes trailing across the platform. "By the laws of Eldmere, the accused may be spared if the king grants pardon." The crowd hushed. All eyes turned to Rowan. He looked down at Corwin, his uncle, his betrayer, the man who had chained him like a beast, and then he looked at the people gathered below, the faces of those who had lost faith and found it again. He said, "Once I thought forgiveness impossible. But I have learned that mercy frees both the victim and the villain. Corwin Vane, your crimes will live in memory, but your punishment is to live as well. You are stripped of title and lands. You will serve as healer in the same villages your fear destroyed. You will see the people you once called expendable." Corwin stared at him, stunned. "You would make me a servant." "I would make you useful," Rowan said. The priest nodded gravely. "So it is written." The guards led Corwin away. The crowd murmured, not in outrage but in wonder. A king who forgave. Such a thing had not been seen in generations. When the square cleared, Rowan turned to Lyra. "You told me once that compassion was courage. Today I learned what you meant. You gave them something greater than vengeance," she said. "You gave them peace." He smiled faintly. "Then it's yours as much as mine." That evening, as twilight deepened, Rowan walked alone through the corridors of the restored tower. The air smelled of wax and clean stone. He found Lyra on the balcony overlooking the valley, her hair stirred by the wind. "You should be celebrating," he said. "They're lighting bonfires in your name." "I'd rather watch the stars," she said. "They don't demand speeches." He joined her at the railing. Below them, the river shimmered, reflecting the first lights of the village beyond the gates. "You once told me you were just a girl," he said. "You were wrong." "And you once told me you weren't a king," she replied. "You were wrong too." He laughed quietly. "Then we're even." For a while they stood in silence. Then Rowan said, "The council wants to crown me anew, to erase the years of shadow. But a crown means nothing if I wear it alone. I would have you beside me, not as savior or servant, but as equal." Lyra turned to him, eyes wide. "Equal? Queen if you'll have it," he said. "You've already ruled my heart." Let the world see what it owes you. She stared at him, then shook her head slightly, smiling through tears. You always did have a way with impossible promises. Then let me keep one, he said, taking her hand. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain and cedar, the same smell that had filled the tower the day they first met. Below, the people's laughter rose with the sound of flutes and drums. A single drop of rain landed on her palm, glimmering like a tear of silver. She looked at it, then at him. Yes, she said simply. The coronation took place beneath an open sky. No roof, no shadows, just light. Rowan stood before his people, the crown of Eldmere gleaming in the priest's hands. When the moment came, he turned to Lyra. Together, he said. They knelt, and the crown was set between them, its twin halves joined once more. One of gold, one of silver, forged anew from what had been broken. The priest spoke. Let light and shadow rule as one. As they rose, the crowd erupted in cheers. Bells rang across Hollowspire, echoing through the valley and beyond. The wind carried the sound to every corner of the realm. Rowan looked at Lyra, his voice barely a whisper over the noise. What now? She smiled. Now we live. And as the sun broke through the clouds, the curse of Eldmere ended. Not with a battle cry, but with laughter, the sound of a world that had finally learned how to begin again. And so, the story of the Hollow King ends, not in darkness but in light. A kingdom once lost to silence now breathes again, and those who dared to hope have found their voices. But the world of stories never truly sleeps. Somewhere beyond the mountains, another tale is stirring. If you felt the weight of this journey, the fall, the forgiveness, the fire, then this is your realm. Subscribe, join our fellowship of listeners and dreamers, and be the first to walk into the next legend waiting to rise. Leave your mark in the comments below. Tell me what part of this story stayed with you, what truth or moment you'll carry. Your words are the spark that keeps these stories alive. Until the next tale unfolds, keep the light burning, keep believing in impossible things. And remember, every ending is only the beginning of another story.